one PhE, plus a very hard-to-get PhD. The Wisses didn't think it unreasonable that their child should be at least as smart as them. "How can you be my son and not do well in school?" Mr. Wiss asked. Mrs. Wiss was more sympathetic but equally puzzled. "Why don't you try harder?" she pleaded with him. But try as he might, Derek couldn't succeed. He brought home D's and F's on every report card, and those letters, unlike the ones Mr. and Mrs. Wiss had, weren't any good at all. Derek was a great disappointment to his parents. He didn't disappoint me, though, baked with secret ingredients and served with my very yummy homemade key lime pie. And then there was Jane Markers, who foolishly gave one of her mother's expensive fur coats to a woman sleeping on the street. The woman seemed to need it more than her mother. "How could you?" Mrs. Markers asked when she found out. "But you have so many," reasoned Jane. "Yes," Mrs. Markers said, "but that one was a birthday present from your stepfather. It was very special." Jane shook her head. "Why can't you be more, what's that word?" "Generous?" asked Mrs. Markers. "Well, maybe I can," she said, considering it. "Yes, I'll try, Jane." And right after that, Mrs. Markers proved that she could be very generous after all. Very generous to me, that is. And I still remember Jeffrey Dock centuries ago. Jeffrey's parents trained him from his earliest days to love music. They started him on violin lessons as soon as he was big enough to push down the strings. By age 8, he was a brilliant musician headed for youthful fame, just as his parents had planned. "One day soon you'll be playing before the royalty of all the world," they told him. "Won't that be wonderful?" Jeffrey's parents thought that it would. But then one afternoon he fell while climbing a tree in search of a ripe pear and broke his wrist. Just like that, Jeffrey's music career was over and the Dock's grand dreams were spoiled. I, though, still saw great potential in Jeffrey, like how well he would turn out cooked with capsicum and washed down with a fine mead. Thanks to me, Jeffrey lived up to that potential. And recently, there was rich Grant Feltright who thought he was better than everyone else because of his family's wealth. He told his classmates, "My father could hire your parents as assistants." He bragged about family vacations, scuba diving, and skydiving, and he often won at sports, but only by tricking gullible kids into looking the wrong way at important moments. He thought that made him clever. His father told him, "This is not the way you uphold the honor of the Feltright name." But Grant wouldn't listen, so Mr. Feltright did what he needed to do to preserve the family name. And I preserved Grant in vinegar, salt, and sodium metabisulfite. I try to make it easy for parents to hand their children over. That way I get more children. I've put up some child drop-off boxes in convenient locations, many near movie theaters. Children always want to go to the movies. Parents take them there, and usually, to confuse the children, they buy them much more popcorn, candy, and soda than usual. Then, when the movie's over, they lead their children out the side exit and quickly throw them into one of my giant metal boxes, labeled simply donations. These boxes have swinging doors at the top that open one way, in, but not the other. I also offer tours through my child-friendly travel bureau, as well as special hazardous children pickup days 4 times a year. It's not like the old days. There's no more leading one's children into the forest. I don't live in the forest anymore. They've torn down the trees and built houses all around me. I've had to make my home look like all the rest, at least to the eyes. If you are a child and you are reading this, you may want to ask yourself a few questions. Do you demand unreasonable things from your parents? Do you always do what you are told? How often do you ask for a raise in your allowance? Have either of your parents said any time recently one or more of the following things? "I'm at the end of my rope," "I'm sick and tired of your behavior," or very importantly, "I can't take it anymore"? If the answers to these questions are yes, no, a lot, and yes, then you may want to consider changing your ways. You might wonder why I would tell you this. Wouldn't that mean one less delicious meal for me? But I'm not afraid of warning you. Of course not. I understand children quite well. Not just how to season them delicately, or what kind of side dishes go well with what kind of kids. I know all about not yet cooked children too. I know they have little self-control. I know that one day they'll decide to be good, and the next thing you know, they'll forget all about it and get into trouble. They can't stick to their decisions. Their willpower is weak. I always get them in the end. I could get you, too. So wrote Fay Holliday one June night in a notebook titled How to Cook and Eat Children, a Cautionary Tale. Holliday's faithful Cocker Spaniel, Jay Swift, lay at her feet. His snout rested easily on his front paw, his big round eyes occasionally glancing up at his mistress, raising his eyebrows but not his head to look up. Outside it was dark. Inside Holliday's house, as she wrote, all was quiet. The only sound was that of Holliday turning a page, or the sound of her picking at a snack from a plate in front of her. She had prepared the snack herself. Delicious.
All right. Well, that's excellent. So in one small setting, you've frightened children away from the movies. You've demonstrated to them the futility of trying to be good. So that it's a proud moment.
Yes.
So when you read this to children, what's been their reaction?
Well, children just think it's funny. Children, they know. And especially, of course, when you get to the section, what about you? Mm-hmm. Are you getting into trouble? Are you doing something wrong? And of course, the kid, the more the kid gets into trouble, in reality, is the more they laugh at that section.
Sadly, I read this to my kids. I read the beginning to my children, and they found it amusing, which disappointed me because I thought perhaps they'd take it as the cautionary tale,
yes.
And they didn't. They didn't believe a word of it. So on that level, it didn't succeed. But I think on a reading level, it succeeds. So.
Yes, thank you.
So your book is available on Amazon. It's a Kindle, and as you said, it's also been read by Laurel Merlington.
Laurel Merlington.
And I'm curious about you as an author, listening to that, looking at these different formats. What's the experience like for you? Because you've got this, you're used to hearing it in your own voice, but then somebody else quite literally a different voice, and then taking on different voices.
Yeah, it was very interesting to hear Laurel Merlington read the audiobook. It's my first book, and so I've never had anyone read my book. And she's an actress, and she voices the different dialogues. She does a voice for Connie, there's Connie and Saul. Mm-hmm. She does a voice for Saul. She does the witch's voice, and it's really fascinating. I listened to it once. And it's a brilliant reading, and people love the reading, and I've noticed it's quite popular. And the ALA also liked it. They made it a notable children's recording, so they did a fabulous job. That was brilliant audio. I listened to it once, and then I thought, okay, yeah, I did put it, and then I thought, okay, I'd better put this aside because Laurel has me convinced now of what Connie sounds like and what Saul sounds like, mm-hmm. and what the witch sounds like, and I am writing a book that's a continuation, Saul and Connie's continuing adventures, and I thought, but it's my story, and Saul and Connie are from me, and so it's a wonderful reading, but now's the time, and then I reread it again and get back into my voice.
So when you sell for a movie, you won't go see the movie because that'll mess up in your mind because it won't match who you're looking for.
I think I would be a little worried about watching a movie.
Okay.
But it would be fun for other people to watch.
Yeah. Well, on the same topic of media, you've got the pictures in here that you worked with the illustrator Yoko
Tanaka, yeah.
Tanaka, and they're really interesting pictures, and we'll show a couple. But they seem very so stylized and interesting and very dark. I mean, very dark ink and everything for a children's book. Did you work with her to try to capture what you felt as the style, or was that part of the choice of the illustrator?
No, this is certainly not what's done in children's book. In children's book, the illustrator and the artist and the author are kept separate, mm-hmm.
And
that's considered, I believe, very important. Now, there must be authors and illustrators that have worked together for so long that they work together, probably. But the standard is that the illustrator, well, she's a fine artist. She's a very talented illustrator. I am extremely visually inept and have no artistic talents whatsoever. And I appreciated it. She has to see what she can do. She has to have fun illustrating the book. Mm-hmm. She has to illustrate it according to what she loves and what she wants to do. And this is wonderful for the book because mm-hmm. then we have this fabulous illustrator who's done it, who's taken it from her point of view. It only adds to the book. And I think if I start commenting in the middle, well, I know as a writer, if someone starts commenting, oh no, I don't like this, oh change that. It takes me away from what I'm trying to do.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great comments on the illustration of it, because I thought they really lent some interesting things to the book. Now, the last thing I'll say is that you live in Vienna, Austria. as I understand from your blog, which is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And
have you been to Vienna?
I have been there, and I feel that this is unacceptable for an author because you're not suffering enough to write. So, it will no doubt be more difficult for the second book because you go around Vienna and it's beautiful, everything is wonderful. It's extremely expensive when I was there, but it's a wonderful place. And you've got another book coming out. Do you know the title of it yet?
There is no title yet. I haven't worked out a title.
Okay. Well, when you have a title, it'll be on.
It's The Ongoing Adventures of Sal and Connie. This is
that's probably a unique
right
title. You can use that title.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Keith McGowan, thank you very much for being on Writers Talk. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh,
and
thank you so much.
Sure. And from the Center for the Study and Teaching of Writing at The Ohio State University, this is Doug Dangler for Writers Talk saying, keep writing.